folks, welcome back to the Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. And today it's all about Texas, Texan, and Texit. A lot's going on, folks. We've got some pretty cool news and something I want to play for you because it's a shot across the bow. Things are heating up here in Texas. And I just want to congratulate you or express my condolences. Not sure which one it is. You were not raptured during the eclipse. Everybody was expecting a lot of things to happen. We're still here, as you probably know. What's amazing to me is it was incredible. We're in totality, even though we had some cloud cover. It was pretty exciting. I'm not sure my wife was as into it as I was, but when it reached totality, it's bizarre because it's just this crescent, 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 and then as soon as it covers, it's like bam, the whole sky lights up. It's kind of an odd experience, if you've ever experienced that, and I'm sure many of you have who are in Texas or were in the path. But it was a special event, and it was good to do. Really interesting, and of course, now we just literally had it rain cats and dogs and have a flash flood warning. So welcome back. We are in Central Texas. It changes by the minute around here. But I'm excited to talk to you today about three big topics. One is really, well, they're all three related. Texas as a sovereign nation, and the idea of sovereignty and self-determination. Texan, the token, Texan token, and then Texit as in the exit from the union. And there's some pretty big news around this, and I wanted to share that with you today. But first, we'll say hello to you as folks keep coming in here, and then we're going to hear from Daniel Miller, who had a big announcement. And I just want, when you watch this video, pretty presidential, if you ask me. But Sam Kemp would know more about that than I would. Sam Kemp, hello to you. Let's talk about it. Hello. What's up, Ego Foundation? Mike Ostel, he is in the house here. This is fantastic on a Tuesday. Dan, good to see you. Francis Powell, Taryn, good to see you. Everybody is in the chat. Tin Top, what's up? Texas Cans, Ease and Chill is here. Everyone's here. And this guy right here, Pulse Chain Trainer. Happy to catch a live one. It seems only getting crazier by the day, ready for a new start. And that's really what it is, right? Rebooting the system. Do you believe that this thing is sustainable? I don't think anyone does. There's a recent poll that came out, and it's in Newsweek, and this reference to this poll that was done, Daniel Miller talked about it. If you look at those who agreed or were unsure, we're close to 50% of people across 25 states who support their state leaving the union. You think things are a little bit crazy right now? I never would have expected this. So let me give you a little bit of background. So I read the book Texit by Daniel Miller, and this is well over 3 years ago now. And I was really moved by this. And of course, you think about the 2020 elections, you think about all of the shenanigans that have gone on, and that's probably not the right word. It got me thinking, you know what? This is literally, it's gone over a cliff. We can't send somebody to Washington and feel like they're going to make any difference. They just get chewed up and they get, basically ground up in that machine that's in Washington, D.C. And when you think about politics, you start examining, why do we even have this thing? Why do we have this union? Why do we have this federal government? Because it seems like, in the past, and the purpose of it would be to serve us, to make our lives better. And it's, I would say, if you just kind of ask people their general feeling, do you feel like the federal government is set up, or any government is set up to make your life better? I'm not sure you'd have a resounding yes to that one. And so there's obvious, issues with just government control and those type of things. It's gotten out of hand, and we know that because of the Charlie 19 and all sorts of things happening across the world. But something more important, I think, is happening. That is, the demographics are shifting, right? We've got, the greatest generation. Many of those who fought in World War II are gone. We have this, baby boomer generation. My dad passed away 2 years ago. And I think about those that are in their, 70s, 80s, 90s. They're definitely folks that vote, which is good. But when it comes to leadership, we've got guy in the White House is almost 80, and Trump's 78 or something like that. There's a changing of the guard that's happening, and it's a very fundamental shift in outlook, in philosophy, in a way. And I think it's driven mostly by not having this essentially this hangover that came from the depression. And so I'm going to give you my opinion on that. And we're going to dive into how that relates to Texas and independence and why we set up the Texan token, what the purpose of doing this financially was. So my father or my grandfather was born in 1911, and my son was born in 2011. And it's really interesting to look back. My grandfather grew up during the Depression. He was, literally a Depression era child. He literally became of age in the Depression era. And then, of course, World War II. And then after World War II ended, you know, think about what your life was like. You grew up into this world that was literally very, very scarce and limited. And then wartime and sacrifice and all of those things. You think of the values. You had obviously many, many more people that had, faith in their lives, right? They were definitely called into action, but also into service as it relates to the Second World War, and not even counting the First World War. That's a whole other. I'll leave that out for now. But this group of people, I call them, this greatest generation. They were folks who had a really difficult start. And if you look at the parenting of depression era folks, it's, if there's one thing that I would say encompasses it all is that kids are to be seen and not heard. That's kind of the statement. And what's interesting is my parents were raised by depression era parents. And what was interesting is they said after the war, there were so many kids born. That's the baby boomer generation. And no wonder so many kids were born, right? Everybody was off to war. They're back. Hey, let's go. The suburbs just absolutely blew up. And what do you have? You've got a bunch of people having kids. And of course, if you think about this as a man or a woman, but men especially who have gone through war and the depression, you don't need a bunch of snot-nosed kids running around, if you know what I'm saying. And so the parenting style at the time was pretty strict. And it was also like, hey, kids, shut up and sit down. And of course, what did that create? And I think about my dad. My dad was born in 1948, and he was a hippie of all hippies. And I know we got some hippies in the chat. And what does that mean? I mean, he was the kind of guy that was like, yeah, old man, you don't know a damn thing. And of course, my dad really embraced that, summer of love. And you think about what happened in that period of time, but really the 1960s changed a lot of things. And my friend Steve Staggs wrote about that in the 1960s white paper. But everything changed. And we have to understand that the leadership that we have um, grew up in an era where the technologies of the time were limited, right? The secrecy of the US government, the Cold War, all of these things were a certain paradigm. And then comes the internet. And if you think about my generation, right? So we've got greatest generation, my grandfather, my father, who is basically out to lunch, like literally hippie generation. And then you've got what many would call Gen X and kind of a latchkey group, right? To a forgotten about generation in a way that does not trust authority. In my era of Gen X, what we were dealing with was, it was the birth of reality television, right? This was a time of like not trusting anything. And we're very skeptical, but also not a lot of supervision. And that's not, those are generic references. But what did that create in us? It created the folks we see now. And we're seeing this Gen X and younger coming into leadership. But I think the key tool in all of this is how technology is feeding in. So when I grew up, we had a rotary phone. But when I got out of college, I had a cell phone. And in 1996, the first credit card transaction was done on the blockchain. I'm sorry, on the blockchain, on the internet. Netscape did that in 1996, the first secure socket layer, SSL, and a first credit card transaction. If you think about the implications of that, I was just graduating college. And they were like, oh, this World Wide Web is going to take over everything. And of course, we had the dot-com era after that. But what's amazing is we don't realize that we've gone from analog to digital in this time. And if you think about leadership in the world is just now going to be taken over by baby boomer folks. These are the first generation that have been 1 foot in the analog world and 1 foot in the digital world. And now what do we have, right? AI, blockchain, all of this kind of stuff. But the most significant thing is the fact that in the past, it was easy to keep secrets. It was easy to do things in dark, smoky rooms. And the issue that I think a lot of people are having, the globalists, is it's not as easy to keep a secret anymore. And so, what we are seeing with the communication networks and communication tools and our ability to communicate, just like on this platform, is that we're seeing that all of the things that were done in darkness are being exposed to the light. And people don't like that. When you do evil things or you do things that are questionable, you want to keep them secret. And the problem is, most people aren't, they're not able to keep them secret. So what are they doing now? Censorship, right? Information, disinformation, all of these things. Folks, this is on a trajectory to crumble and fall apart. However, it has to before it gets better. And that brings me literally to the point of this whole stream. What we're talking about ultimately is Texas, Texan, and Texit. If you think about this big statement that I put in the thumbnail, where do good people go? We all know, all of the polls are showing that something's got to change. The financial world is crumbling. We've got everything changing digitally in money. We've got everything changing when it comes to the workforce as it relates to AI. We know all of this change is coming, and then all of the bad things people have done are getting exposed. And we're finding that in many cases, we don't know which side is up. That is opportunity, my friends. And that is why we created the Texan token. The Texan token was created because we recognized that the Texas Nationalist Movement, which is the organization in Texas, the largest organization in Texas, serving the needs of educating folks about the sovereignty of Texas. And what's happening right now, and I never thought this would happen 2.5 years ago when we started this whole thing, I didn't really think, wow, there's going to be this conflict at the border in which Texas is going to literally go toe to toe with the federal government. It's a big deal. Eagle Pass, all of the stuff that's happening at the border, putting up razor wire, the Texas National Guard, the invasion at the southern border. And to think that we've got this political atmosphere that is so heated, but it's also really highlighting, I think, some of the most fundamental things. And so one of the things that I think is important is to understand the relationship that we have between us, the people that have created this civilized society, and those that we have tasked to administrate it. So many times right now, you hear people talk about coming up underneath the authority of the Constitution. And I want to challenge you to understand something fundamental. And that is the fact that we don't get our rights from the state. And there's so many across the world, so many people that have authoritarian leaders who they truly believe that their rights come from the state. Like, you're endowed by the state with these rights. That's not what it says, not what the document says. And those have read the Bible know that that's also not the case. But if you look at the Declaration of Independence, we have something, because America as an idea, not as a plot of land and not as a political union, the idea of America is extremely unique. Why? Because it says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And what are inalienable rights? These are things that are self-evident. These are rights that are given to us by a creator. So they establish at the very beginning that who you are and the value, the value, but also the rights that you have come from the creator, from God. And that's where they built this thing and said, all right, we're going to build on this foundation. And this foundation is going to be built on the fact that who you are, what you have as rights and value, is not based on what the state says. So what did we say we were going to do? We're going to create a more perfect union. We're going to try to create something that is going to lead to life, liberty, happiness, those type of things. Well, how's it going? How's it going? Is this thing serving us? Right? Because one of the most important things in the Declaration of Independence, and really the nature of government in general, is this idea of the consent of the governed. You give consent to things. And, a lot of times there are very good laws and good rules, right? They keep order. This is the law is literally the core of the civilized society. And if you think about what the law comes from, it literally comes from the 10 Commandments. This is the law that was given to Moses. So if we think about what the actual law is, hey, these are the rules, these are the basics, this is what we should abide by. But what's happened is we've created this system in which all of these rules and regulations get created, and you didn't vote for them. It's not of the consent of the governed anymore. And so people get very irritated with that because people are sticking their head where it doesn't belong. And especially here in Texas, we know that that's true. And so what you end up having is people that are trying to use all types of mechanisms in order to try to get an advantage. This is why we have a problem at the southern border, right? You don't have to go too far to realize that this is an invasion. And what is happening is they want to change the very demographics, right? For the next census, to be able to redistribute and redetermine how many representatives you have, and to get basically a lock on the political, future of America. And it's really difficult for a lot of people to go, well, what do I do? I'm just one person. And that's precisely why we decided we're going to come alongside the Texas nationalist movement. We're going to say, hey, we're going to create the Texan token. This is an immutable contract on the blockchain, the first endowment contract ever created on the blockchain. Well, what's an endowment? Well, I spent my life in my career in the nonprofit space, helping nonprofit organizations raise money. And when I saw what Richard Hart did with the Sens Foundation, he said, I'm going to give you points. If you donate to the Sens Foundation, we'll give you points towards this Pulse airdrop. I thought, wow, this is a brilliant way to raise money. The T&M needed to raise money. That's what I do. And we're like, why don't we utilize the blockchain and a means for people to give directly to the Texas nationalist movement to support the efforts of Texit, of literally helping people understand their God-given rights and the fact that this is at the consent of the governed. This is, you create this thing. We form and fashion this thing, which is government, right? It serves at our behest, if you will. And so what was amazing is you guys stepped up, and folks from across the community, they gave $1.5 million to the Texas Nationalist Movement, a registered 501c4 organization. And from that, we were able to airdrop the Texan token to over 20,000 holders. And today, Texan token exists. And where are we? We are literally right before the bull run. Well, what's the whole point of this? Well, part of the issue is people have felt for so long, what do I do? We send another guy to Washington? No. What we do is we reboot the system. And this whole idea of Texas independence is the fact that it's very difficult to do anything politically if you don't have any money. But because the money is changing, and the fact that we have this ability to create our own value, and it's really through our agreement that we do that. If we agree it has value, it has value. Because fiat currency, the US dollar, is not based on gold or silver. It's a shared fiction. It's based on the, full faith and credit of the United States of America. That's our production. That's us. They reach into our pocket and send it to Ukraine. We said, you know what? What if we came together, those who appreciate freedom and sovereignty, and why don't we create something where we can store value in this digital asset called Texan? But when people say, you know what, I'm going to lock up my Texan, they're going to get more. It's an endowment. Literally, they'd have the ability to earn more by saying, you know what, I'm going to hang on to this. And the longer you hold, the more that you get when it comes to yield. It's an incredible concept because it's built on an endowment. And an endowment is used, and you're familiar with this, nonprofit organizations, universities, all kinds of organizations will use an endowment. And what they do is they invest their money, and the interest income is what sustains them. And the whole premise of this, in the beginning of literally the creation of digital currencies, is this opportunity for us to literally stake our Texan tokens, or whatever token that you have that is stakeable, to receive yield. The idea is that the longer you wait, the more you receive. And this idea that you build holders and you build this critical mass of people in agreement, and you store value. Well, what's amazing is something unique happened in this process. Over 2 years ago, literally, things started happening across the world. In Canada, they basically shut down the truckers' bank accounts because somebody was buying food for them. Look what happened to the folks up in the farmers in the Netherlands. Look what's happened across the world. We're seeing this, globalism thing, right? You will own nothing and be happy. And people are really pushing back on it. But we've seen this because of the Charlie 19 and because of the desire for those who literally, they just think that they're cleaner, right? They think that you're the great unwashed. and that you're stupid and that they've got to basically make the rules for you. They know better than you do. And so rather than us having things being decided more locally, they want to do it from Davos. And leadership in America would love to just give it over to those folks, right? Because they've been bought and paid for. It's called corruption. So back to our topic of generations. Look who we have that's speaking up now. Generation X is about to take over. And what I mean by that, it's their time to come into leadership. But there's a unique perspective that sensible Gen Xers have, and that is they had one foot in the analog and one foot in the digital. We don't have leadership right now that understands the digital, but everything is going that way. So who are the famous who are the famous Gen Xers that are out there? It's Russell Brand, it's Elon Musk, it's Joe Rogan. There's a number of people that you see. Tucker Carlson's a great example. There are a lot of folks who are like, hold on a second, we need to rethink this. And so everything is coming together at once. Not only the heavy hand of authoritarians and people who have done things in secret that don't want to be exposed, they're being exposed. But you also have movements politically, communication networks, and now the ability for us to literally accumulate value. Because the money is going digital, the fact is we have an opportunity to build on the sovereignty of not only the political nature of Texas by being independent, but also being able to invest and store our value in a place that doesn't change. What I mean by that is the Federal Reserve can change a database record and print 5 trillion more dollars. What does that do? Ultimately leads to inflation. The reason that people like Bitcoin and the whole purpose of digital currencies is the idea that somebody can't monkey with the rules. They can't change a database record. It's fixed. Or at least you know how it's going to inflate, that there's no one that literally can press a button because it's completely decentralized. And I think what we're going to find is that leaders who understand this are going to be embracing this decentralized approach to finances because it's the only way, in my opinion, that we can starve the war machine. So there's two ways. One, cut off the funding, and two, put it into your pocket. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that through agreement because right now, digital currency is speculative. But just imagine what happens in 10 or 20 years. These things will still be around. You can't shut them down. They're immutable contracts on the blockchain. They're trying to do everything they can to make it illegal. But we've got a guy, Richard Hart, who literally is fighting the SEC for the freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to transact, freedom of privacy. These are big things, folks. And so a lot of people in our community are worried about the next meme coin. Oh, mine's going up, mine's going down. It is just about money and making money. And hey, I like it just like the next guy does. But there's something much, much bigger at stake here. And that's what we wanted to come alongside. And so when you look at the Texan token, which can be found at Texan.cc, you'll understand, hold on, what if people from around the world were able to store their value in communities of trust? Well, think about this for a second. Whatever political affiliation, organization, people group, whatever it is, if you were able to, with a group of people that agree, store value and increase value by representing a community of people, you have the ability to invite people from across the world into your struggle and into your story. And so here we are. The state of Texas is the leader when it comes to separating from the Union, the United States Union. And we've got our governor, Greg Abbott, who is literally saying this is our sovereign right as a state. I mean, some of the sharpest words I've heard out of that guy. But I want you to hear from another guy. And he made a big, big statement yesterday and has been making a lot of statements. And that's the leader of the Texas nationalist movement. And I want you to hear what's going on because there's a recent article that came out in Newsweek about the fact that 50% of people from 25 states support their state seceding from this economic, cultural, and political union called the United States of America. We are a state. We are all states. And Texas is the leader. And I want you to look at this video. Something happened for me when I watched this. And this was seeing Daniel Miller in a whole new light. Folks, I want you to watch this with me. I've got this on 1.5 so we can get through it a little bit quicker. If you want to watch this, it's easy to find. You can go right to the Texas Nationalist Movement's Twitter. But listen to this. It's absolutely incredible.
Good day. I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement. Today, I address President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador of the United States of Mexico, its citizens, and most importantly, the people of Texas and the northern states of Mexico. We stand at a crossroads where the actions or inactions of our governments are not just failing us, but actively jeopardizing our future. That is why it is time for the Texas Nationalist Movement to take action within the scope of our mission and create a path toward a long-term solution to this border crisis. Our shared border has become a battleground for a crisis that affects both our lands. This has grown to become a national security crisis, a public safety crisis, a public health crisis, and a humanitarian crisis unprecedented in our history. The unwillingness of the United States of Mexico to enforce law and order within its own borders and to directly aid the United States federal government in its facilitation of this crisis has directly harmed the people of Texas. Encouraging or turning a blind eye to illegal border crossings has exacerbated the issue, leading to a humanitarian disaster, a surge in criminal activity, and a strain on Texas resources and public services. But let us not forget the lessons of history. During the Texas Revolution, it was not only Texas that sought independence from a government perceived as corrupt and neglectful of its constitutional obligations. States such as Zacatecas, Yucatan, and Nuevo Leon expressed their discontent and desire for autonomy due to similar grievances. This shared historical struggle highlights a recurring theme of central government overreach and the suppression of local rights and self-governance. While these other states were ultimately unsuccessful in achieving their independence from Mexico, Texas was not. And today, Texas stands as a free and independent state. The crisis at our border mirrors the turmoil within the northern states of the United States of Mexico. These states endure the consequences of Mexican federal policies that ignore the realities of border life. They suffer from violence, economic disruption, and the erosion of community safety and cohesion. This crisis harms not only Texans, but also the citizens of Mexico's northern states, who are equally deserving of peace, security, and prosperity. Many years ago, I learned of a movement that was developing within the northern states of Mexico, whose goal was to separate from the United States of Mexico and become self-governing independent nation states. The birth of this movement is a response to years of neglect, corruption, and failure of the central government in Mexico City to address the unique needs and challenges of these regions. Their grievances are not unlike those that are leading Texas to currently seek its independence, reflecting a deep-seated desire for self-governance, respect for local laws and customs, and the right to pursue economic and social development free from distant bureaucratic control. The very existence of this movement and its growing support shows that the Mexican government has forgotten the lesson that Texas taught it on the San Jacinto battlefield, that all free governments are founded on the authority of the people and instituted for their benefit, and that the people have at all times an inalienable right to reform, alter, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. So that is why today, I am announcing that the Texas Nationalist Movement is offering its full support to this movement in its mission to assert the independence of the northern states of Mexico. Given the Mexican government's failure to address these issues and its direct role in undermining the stability of our border, the Texas Nationalist Movement believes that the only way to secure our border with the United States of Mexico is to no longer share a border with the United States of Mexico. We pledge to provide assistance, expertise, and solidarity to our neighbors in their pursuit of a peaceful, democratic, and legal pathway to independence. Our support will be aimed at helping these states organize a powerful movement towards self-determination, focusing on peaceful dialogue, legislative action, and advocacy to secure and win a referendum for independence. The actions of the Mexican government have brought us to a crossroads in this defining moment. The Texas nationalist movement stands firm in the belief that the independence of the northern states of Mexico can help them and Texas secure a future of peace, security, and prosperity. We are committed to this path as our solemn duty, to the principles of self-governance and the rights of the people. The time has come for bold action, not just for the sake of our generation, but for generations to come.
How about them apples? Wow, very presidential of Daniel Miller. But think about this, folks. On either side of Texas, we got 25 states who have supported, actually close to 30 who have supported the governor and what we're doing at the border. This is obviously the major issue when it comes to the election. And now a call from the TNM to support and pledging their support to the border state with the states that border Texas, and it's really interesting strategy, and I think that it's one that has gained a lot of attention. This is a bold move by Daniel Miller, but it's one in which leads to a tipping point. And if you read the book Texit, you would know these things are surprising how they work. Years and years ago when the Texas nationalist movement started, Daniel started in 1996, but it officially started in 2005. When you would poll people in Texas, it would be in the single digits of whether they'd support independence. And of course, there's always been people who have had the secede bumper sticker on their car or their truck. But now it's getting to the point where like, well, where do good people go? How do we do this? This thing is antiquated and it's grown so much out of control that it needs to be pruned. Or in the approach that I would take technologically, it needs to be rebooted. The system needs to be rebooted. But it's very difficult to do that without the money. And so think about this. What would it look like? What would an independent Texas look like? What would it be? What would it look like if other states who are interested in this type of thing were also to have their own, agreement when it comes to their own financial system? We have a significant opportunity because we're focused on how do you tokenize communities of trust? This is just Texas. What about 25 other states? What about countries across the world who literally can say, you know what, we are going to choose what we consider to be value. And whether we store that value or it becomes the actual currency is not really for me to decide. But when it comes to independence of Texas, it literally levels the playing field and says, you know what, let's go to the table and let's decide what our future looks like, because we have this sovereign right to abolish or to change this thing. And that's the thing that you will find happening more and more as this tipping point literally goes over the cliff. And we see literally this race to support independence movements is the fact that people have had enough and they don't know what lever to pull. And so now we have a combination of a political lever and a financial lever to pull. We've got the ability for folks to literally choose. And look what people are doing without independent Texas. Where's all the resources? Where are all the money? Where are all the companies going? They're going to Texas. And in the world, when I've got friends from across the world, and there are many who are in this chat, the world needs a strong America. But I'm going to remind you, we are the United States of America. And this idea of America literally is not being represented by the federal government. That doesn't mean the idea of America isn't strong here in Texas or in other states. It certainly is. But in my opinion, it's destined to fail, not just because of its political issues, but because of its financial ones. And that's honestly where I see the most incredible opportunity for not only us in crypto, but for the Texas independence movement. And so I want to say kudos to Daniel Miller, an incredible support that he's expressing to the folks in Mexico. But this is something that, how real is it that we're going to see independence of 25 states leading? Well, what does the world look like with an independent Texas? And it's hard for a lot of people to imagine. They're like, well, you can't do that. Well, yes, you can. Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution states it very, very clearly. We form governments, the people do, and we forget that it is based on our consent, it's based on our creation. And this is one of the fundamental things that I think people miss is they miss the fact that, because we recognize that our rights don't come from the state, that we form and fashion a government. And really, it's actually the rules when it comes to constitutions. It's not that its citizenry come up underneath the Constitution, it's that the government and the bureaucracy is restricted and limited by these things. We're going to enumerate the things that you can do. And so, what has happened over the years? Well, when these things have gotten out of control, people push back and they abolish or change it. It's amazing when you look back into the early 1900s and how many countries were in the world. And now we've got, 194? Self-determination and independence movements are significant. And what's ironic about this is that the US has supported all kinds of independence movements around the world. Unfortunately, they've been driven by the CIA, but that's a whole other topic. But it's only when it's convenient. And so what's amazing and what you will see is you will see this. There's certainly a lack of support when it comes to, the federal government isn't interested in us standing up and being separate. But if the state of Texas were independent, it's the 9th largest economy in the world. And what would it look like if we had folks who were leading and literally protecting their people? It's like this novel idea. It's funny. It's almost like in Eastern Europe, there's a couple of countries that are like, no, we're not accepting people from everywhere. We're not going to have open borders. No, we are going to have a culture. We are going to have requirements. We are going to have rules. This thing's out of control, folks. And I'm really excited because the combination of the financial tools and the political ones gives us an opportunity where Texas can really truly be a shining city on a hill and can be one that is a catalyst for independent movement around the world. And us in this community and in the blockchain and in Pulse Chain, we have an advocate like Richard Hart who understands what's at stake. I feel like so many people are distracted by the meme coins and what's happening in this cycle. Hey, that's great because it's about the money. But the degens aren't going to be the ones that actually change the system. They're going to be the ones that are just essentially extracting value from it. We have an opportunity, a wholesale opportunity to change the very nature of how we're represented. And we're able to re-examine how we, govern ourselves, self-determination. We've got to reboot this system. And so I'm so excited about the strength of the TNM. And I want to say thank you to you. If you're somebody who supported the Texan token, you directly supported the TNM. You gave them this ability. When it comes to the 139,000 petitions that went to Governor Abbott, I mean, there is a movement here, folks, and it's about to get to a tipping point. And you know what? I say let it fail. Because in this process, it's going to fail on its own. And we need to have alternatives. And so on the crypto side, I see Richard Hart creating an alternative, truly way ahead, right? You see all of these forces within regulatory bodies trying to make it illegal to be in crypto. Why? Because they're threatened. But ultimately, people have this insatiable desire for yield. So what are they doing? They're going after crypto. What has Richard done? Even though, so many people are like, oh, where's Richard? And why does the chart look the way it does? Folks, this is a way bigger win. And I think that we're so short-sighted to look at just this cycle and go, I just need to, make every amount of money so I can just retire and go do nothing. And here's a guy who from 25 years old could have retired. And what's he doing? He's fighting for your right to speak, your right to move, your right to transact, and your right to privacy. And do that in an alternative way on the blockchain. And that's in the Pulse Chain. And folks, you're going to really thank him. You're going to thank Richard Hart when all of this is said and done. I believe he's going to win this case with the SEC. It's funny, the lawyers that basically, it was so savage. They basically said, how can you spend money that you didn't have yet unless you're accusing him of using a time machine? That was hilarious, by the way. But folks, I want you to see how all this stuff fits together. You're not just supporting, oh, my Pulse Chain SAC or my Pulse X SAC isn't doing great, or hey, it's Ink token, or it's this token or that token, or this combination of tokens, or, there are some great strategies that are out there, But right now, we're just kind of mixing and matching the money that's kind of in the ecosystem. And there's going to be a big shift here when this SEC case gets solved, happening coming up, and um, we're going to see something really important that we need to support. And in my opinion, we need to support people's ability to speak and to move, to have privacy and to transact. And I'll tell you what, they're making it very clear they're coming after us. And so I'm committed, and I think you were likely committed to doing everything we can to support people's ability to be free, independent, and sovereign. And to me, this is the most exciting thing because when it comes to projects on the Pulse chain, Texan, in my opinion, that's the only token that's tied to a political outcome of any kind. And if you think about what happens if Texas is independent, what does it look like for crypto if we have a seat at the table when it comes to crypto regulation? What if Texas was the greatest place on earth for crypto, not Dubai? Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, it would be nice. But those are the kind of things. There are so many potential benefits. Now, there's downsides and a lot of fear. But if you really look at those who've made a difference in this world, it's really started with a very small group of people. And we have overwhelming support when it comes to not only Texas, but now 25 states. I don't think this is a violent revolution. I don't think that this is, some sort of civil war. I think what it is we get to the point where the folks in Austin, and if you're listening to this and you're somebody that's a leader in Austin, we need people with a backbone who are willing to truly change and really, truly advocate for the betterment of the people and recognize that, you know what? We need to reboot the system. And in my opinion, the benefits far outweigh the impending doom that's already coming, whether we do something or not. And I love the fact that, we're thinking ahead. I love the fact that Richard Hart is thinking ahead. When he talked about freedom of speech and freedom of movement, nobody was talking about that stuff. And now it's the most important issues. Look at Brazil. They literally are shutting off Twitter, right, to censor people because they've got political, opponents who are criticizing them for being corrupt because they are. Folks, if it wasn't for Twitter and X becoming, literally you have the ability to say what you want, we wouldn't be in this situation. And this is an example of Gen X leadership stepping up. And so when it comes to Texas being the place where good people can go, and I just imagine, I think about what kind of world do I want my kids and grandkids to be raised in? I want it to be an abundant world. I want it to be a place where literally it's not built on scarcity. And as we see things changing, we have the opportunity to do that. But unfortunately, everything from energy to defense to pharmaceuticals, biotech, all of these things, it is a corporate run, military industrial complex controlled, corporate relationship. And honestly, this is essentially the foundation of crony capitalism. We do not have free markets. We don't have fairness. And then if you think about it, they're coming directly after our own identity. And so it is time, in my opinion, for us to be able to come together, understand what's at stake, and galvanize ourselves around what we're building together. And I said this in my last stream, and I'll say it again. We together in this community are building the alternative financial system. So if you care about crypto and you care about money, realize this isn't just, Pulse Chain is real DeFi. Nope. It is real DeFi. But no, we together are building the alternative financial system. Now imagine this. What if there was a political country, right? A vision of Richard Hart to create a nation. Here we have this already built since 2005. What if Texas literally has a referendum and finally the leadership in Austin says, you know what? Let's put it to a vote. Let's see what people think. And some people will be like, yeah, that's a fringe thing. We'll put it to a vote and we'll see. What would it look like? You start examining what Brexit did outside of the European Union, and you look at what it would look like if Texas was outside of the American Union, it would send shockwaves through Washington. But also, think about the the ability for us to reboot the system. In a way, it's preserving the ideals of America in Texas. And that's what I see from Daniel Miller. And I'm like, this, we have to do something. We have to do something. And I think it's just an amazing providential thing that we have this huge shift in the financial system too. So my hope is that folks that are a part of the Texan token and are part of supporting the TNM find themselves in abundance this next bull run or the next cycle after that. And then they can invest an abundance of resources into the things that make this place and their self-determination a place of safety and security for their families, where they've got the freedom. And that's really at the bottom line, is defending that. And this political union, that we have, it's very, very clear that this is the United States of America. It is a political union, and it's one that's time we have to reevaluate. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean we're not patriotic. In fact, actually, we're trying to preserve what makes this place great. And right now, they're trying to rip it apart at the seams. And so it is go time. And Daniel Miller said it incredibly well, and I support him completely. But you want to find yourself in a position to pull levers, if you will. We have a means to do that on the financial side, which is the Texan token, the first endowment contract on the blockchain. And to me, what greater utility do you want than the birth of a new nation? And that's really what we're talking about. So if you want to know more, you can check out Texan.cc. What we're all about is literally supporting independence in Texas. And that doesn't mean you have to live in Texas. But I think the implications of this is we need to have strong leadership in the world that is principled. And it's really interesting, whether you like Tucker Carlson or not. He made a really good point. He was given a speech, and it really struck me. He said, you know what? This isn't a matter of Republican versus Democrat. What this boils down to is there's a group of people that believe that they're God. That's what it comes down to. There's a group of people in this world that believe that they are God or gods, and I mean lowercase g. These are the people that want to live forever, right? These are the people that are the ones that believe that, you should own nothing and be happy. These are the people that think that they know better than you. These are the people that want you to give away your freedom and sovereignty to them, and they will make the choices for you. These are the people, yeah. And folks, something has to be done. And so we need alternatives. And so I think about the foundation of the Pulse chain, which is incredible for the Texan token. I look at Richard Hart and I go, this guy, out of all the founders in crypto, who gets it? And I would say it's basically Charles from Cardano and Richard Hart. Those are the only two that I think actually understand the basics. I think everyone else is just looking to make a buck. And if they can get a buck, they'll step on your neck to get it. I don't see too many people who really want to stand for the true tenets of independence and in the cypherpunk libertarian idea of saying, no, everyone should have their own choice and freedom to inscribe whatever they want on a public blockchain. And that's your speech. And when this gets won, folks, you're going to remind yourself, man, I'm glad I hung on. Because I don't think the implications are just, oh man, my bags are big. Oh, I've got, I made a lot of money. No, we may find ourselves with a whole new nation, a whole different world, and then a group of people who are stepping up who understand that, you know what, you have to give away what you want to receive. You have to give away what you want to receive. We need to find a way to free the captives, and the captives have to be able to make their own decisions and have their own resources. And to me, this is the greatest time in human history, although it's going to be extremely painful. But we need leadership. And, so many people are lamenting the fact that Richard Hart's not streaming. He's doing a lot. And I think about it. He could have just said, forget you bozos. And I just look at all the degenerate behavior and I go, this is selfish ambition, just concerned about themselves and not concerned about others. If we understood what we really had here, we're building the alternative financial system. Think about this. BRICS is a group of countries that are going to create their own SWIFT. We've got the United States in the West, and they're going to have SWIFT, right? They're going to have these systems, right? All of the regulatory is going to try to keep you out of crypto. And they're going to want everything to be centralized. They're going to want to turn USDC into, control Coinbase enough and Circle so that they are ultimately this CBDC. And what we're going to find is that the central banks are going to get together through the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and literally say, all right, let's make an agreement. This is what we're going to peg to. We'll have a tandem agreement between our USD or our CBDCs, and let's move forward essentially with this one world currency. Now, will there be disagreements between the BRICS countries and the West? Yes, there likely will be. But there's not truly an independent one because that's just another version of this one, right? They want to control it, right? Because they don't love dollar dominance and they don't love the fact that the currency war and we're outsourcing all of this inflation across the world. But having a truly decentralized, immutable, true tenets of DeFi, self-custody of your own keys, having that type of system that is up and running, that has all the tools necessary, then in the future, if you're a retailer or you're a purchaser or a consumer, you're literally going to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to use this system. And we're going to actually have one that is truly open source, if you will. And that's the whole idea of it from the beginning. But like Axis Alive said, we are going to have to sacrifice Bitcoin on the altar of decentralization. It's not decentralized anymore. And if we don't defend these tenets, it's just the same thing we're defending in Texas from a political standpoint. We're defending in the financial system with the Pulse Chain. We together are building the alternative financial system. And if you think about it, once all these tools are built within the Pulse Chain, we're going to have the ability to transact. And all of these tools, they're not built yet. This thing isn't standing. It's an adolescent at best. It's probably more like a toddler at this point. But what does that future look like? And are you contributing to it? Are you just trying to skim off what you can and run away? Richard Hart could have done that. That's true leadership. He is leading. And right now, this is the way I find in all of my 51 years on this earth, what I've learned is just when you think the guy's down, right? Just when you think the evil side has won, you watch what happens. I have, optimism, and I'm optimistic about the future, but I know that it's got to get worse before it gets better. But I know that we have the tools in front of us, and there's just so much at stake, folks. There's so much at stake. And so look around, and I would say no financial advice. You invest in whatever you want to invest in. But the question is, what are the things that you're investing in, and are they representative of your values? Period. Right? Are your values doggy coins and frog coins and, butt coins? Seriously. I mean, and you think about there's a lot of fun strategies to be able to extract value. But at the end of the day, Richard says this all the time. If you want a picture of a pony, you can draw one. What does that mean? It ultimately means that the only thing that exists in value are goods and services. That's all there is. Everything else is accounting. And what we have is a proxy for our labor. All that exists is your creative ability and my creative ability to create a good or a service. That's it. Everything else is a proxy for your labor. And so where you decide to place your labor, well, right now you get paid maybe on a direct deposit. It goes to fiat. It goes and you buy stuff. But what is it really based on? It's just a proxy for your labor. And if you understand that, you can put and store that value elsewhere. And if you get together in community with others, you can have literally transformation financially. But at the end of the day, this whole speculative market of crypto is going to ultimately rest itself upon real world assets and real value. And that's the criticism that so many people have of blockchain, is that this is just one big Ponzi scheme. Well, it is speculative in nature, but this is how it starts. Where does it end? It ends with ultimately our share of the world because it's more fair and honest. And I think that that's the interesting thing when it comes to AI that we're going to find. Everyone talks about artificial general intelligence. AGI is one in which it becomes more more intelligent than humans, right? And that they see all these uses for AGI. But there are people who believe that there are going to be literally hours, if not minutes, between AGI and ASI. ASI is artificial superintelligence. And artificial superintelligence is the thing that's really interesting. Because if we find that over the course of hours or a day or minutes, we go from AGI to ASI, what we're going to find is that the super intelligence of AI is going to be able to determine what's true and what's not. And this is what's really interesting. Remember when Google got caught and it said, "Hey, show me pictures of the founding fathers," and everything they did was, brown people or whatever. It wasn't accurate, is the point, and it had bias built in. The whole point of artificial superintelligence is it takes over and says, "No, this is what's true and what's not." Why do you think people are trying to get all of their assets on the blockchain? Is because ultimately, guess what? It's not going to be a judge in your county who determines whether you own the property or not. It's going to be AI. And if you're not don't have ears to hear this, understand this. This is coming. And so whether or not, so they're trying to inscribe upon the blockchain in a decentralized way ownership, because that's going to be the way ownership is determined. You won't go through this, all right, let me hear from this witness and that witness. No, it's going to be inscribed, and either you're the owner or you're not. That's way oversimplified. But if you think about determining ownership, determining, the truth, is really ironic, because here all the censorship is trying to happen. And in the meantime, technology is ultimately going to get to the bottom of it. I think it's going to be an amazing transformation, an amazing renaissance. But I would want the good people of this world who understand where things are headed to be in a position to lead in a new nature and character. And I'll finish with this. Everything we do, every tool that we animate, whether it be a stream, whether it be a gun, whether it be utensils that you use to cook like pots and pans, there's a certain nature and character that you animate those tools with. It could be AI, it could be computer systems, whatever it is. But you are the person who animates tools. Every tool that exists out there is neutral. People are like, the internet is the devil. No, you're the devil, right? The people that animate the tools have a certain nature and character. And so people look around, they're like, oh man, there was a school shooting. Yeah, I wonder why. Did the gun shoot someone? No, the gun didn't get up and walk over and shoot someone. Out of a nature and character, we do a lot, right? We're thoughtful. We are also sometimes mean and rude. So what's really interesting about this big story of what's happening in the world and how Texas and Texan and Texit and the Pulse Chain and Richard Hart, how it all fits together with AI, is the fact that this future that we're looking at, and it's not too far off, is one in which the truth is going to be binary. Isn't that interesting? Everything's non-binary now. Yeah. And that's why, because people that are in the know, the BlackRocks of this world and all these people, they're going to we have to inscribe this somewhere. We need to make sure that we are the owners of this stuff, because it's ultimately going to be the judge. And you're like, man, that doesn't sound good. That sounds kind of like slavery to me. Well, what's interesting about it is, how are we animating the tools and in what nature and character? And that includes politics. So you have the ability, I have the ability, and we need people who have the resources, who have a good moral compass and values to literally say, I'm going to consider others in addition to myself. I'm not going to just go in and try to extract value from you, because this world and this creation is plentiful. It is abundant. How do we remake this system in a way that literally reflects the abundance of the creation? Meaning, it has a yield and it's significant. You plant a kernel of corn in the ground, one kernel turns into 2 or 3 ears on a stalk of corn, and it's about 1,600 new kernels of corn. But you have to delay your gratification. You have to partner with creation. And next thing you know, you have a yield, a harvest. The same thing is true. We have literally locked up all the resources and we have hoarded them. And because of selfish ambition in this world, we're going to step on other people's necks to get what we want. And I think we have an opportunity in the infrastructure and leadership that is either here or coming, that if they can understand that the decisions that they make, you don't have to not be considerate of yourself, but you have to consider others in addition to yourself. And this combination of future is very bright. But we have to have the levers to pull. And so we're trying to have the levers financially within this bullshit community. TNM is trying to make these levers from a political standpoint. But I think ultimately it comes back to the very core of the individual. What choices are you making? Are you just trying to get yours? Are you just trying to destroy other people? Are you just trying to shoot somebody in the foxhole? Are you, like, wake up? We together are building the alternative financial system. Thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. It's Crypto Heartbeat. We'll catch you next time.